Welcome to another Learning to Read video drum lesson. In this drum lesson, we're going to learn how to read basic drum set music. In order to do this lesson and to follow along with the lesson, you're going to need the beat sheet called Drum Set Time. You can get that at onlinedrummer.com. I'm going to start this lesson a little differently, and I'm just going to play line number 1 for you. I want you to look and follow along with the music while I play line number 1. I'm not going to do the repeat. Normally you would repeat and play it again. I'm not going to do that. Line number 1. 1, 2, ready, go. While watching me play number 1, you probably figured out that the X's represented the hi-hat, or the thing that I was playing with the right hand, and the filled-in note heads on the bottom represented the bass drum, or what I was playing with my right foot. What makes reading drum set music a little tricky is that there's no standard set of cymbals or note heads that mean the same thing all the time. For example, in this beat sheet, the X represents the hi-hat. In another piece of music somewhere else, that X might represent a ride cymbal. And then in another piece of music notated by someone else, the X could represent a cowbell. When reading drum set music, it's important to have a notation key, and a notation key tells you what each symbol means. The more you read drum set music, you'll realize that there are more commonly used symbols and locations to represent different drums. But don't be surprised when you come across a piece of music that's different, because there really isn't any standard notation for drumming. Let's look at line number 1 one more time. You'll see that the X's on the top, or the hi-hat, are eighth notes. And from the previous lessons that were just covering the one drum, not the whole drum set, you learned that the eighth notes are counted 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The same thing applies for the drum set. All the counting is going to be the same. Now we're moving it on to multiple drums, and sometimes more than one drum at the same time. When learning to read a piece of drum set music, I like to take one piece at a time. And there's a drumming video on onlinedrummer.com called The Vertical Technique that really explains that technique in depth. But I'm going to use that technique to help learn to read this music. I'm first going to look at count 1. And I see on count 1 that there's a hi-hat and a bass drum both at the same time. I'm just going to hit count 1. 1. 1. That's 1. The and has a hi-hat by itself. And. Then 2. 2. And. Now 3 is the hi-hat and the bass drum together. 3. And then and. 4. And. I would just continue through that whole line in that way until I became comfortable with the rhythms. It's important to start slowly so that you don't get frustrated, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be in time. You can do it slow and choppy at first until you're comfortable with it. So I'm going to do that, just one measure there. You have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Number 1 is definitely not that difficult of a beat, and it's not even that great sounding of a beat, but it's designed to get you used to playing it and used to reading it. Line number 2 is where we get into a regular rock beat. This beat is used very, very often. It's usually the first rock beat everybody learns. So if this is your first drum beat that you're learning, then congratulations. Using that vertical technique, we're taking it a section at a time. I'm going to play very slowly. I'm going to look at count 1 on line number 2, and I see I have the hi-hat, the bass drum together. Then I look at the and. Now 2 has a symbol for a snare drum. Usually the snare drum is located on that line. It's not always a dash like that, but in online drummer notation, I use a dash like that to distinguish it from the toms. So here's 2, then and. Now 3 is a bass and a hi-hat. 3 and 4 and. And you can continue that way, going slowly, trying to get comfortable with it. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I played that very slowly, but it's important to do that at first in order to get comfortable with the beat. When you're first playing it, your goal isn't to make it sound cool. Your goal is to get used to playing it and to be able to play it up to a speed where it will sound neat. Line number 2. 1, 2, ready, go. And repeat. You may have noticed that the beat in line number 2 is the main beat used in the song Back in Black. It's also used in a lot of other songs. It's a very popular and common rock beat. Let's take a look at line number 3. We see that count 1 of line number 3 is the bass and the hi-hat together. The and is the hi-hat. And then the count 2 is the hi-hat, the snare, and the bass drum together. 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's play line number 3 together up to speed. 1, 2, ready, go. And repeat it. That drum beat is also a very popular rock drum beat, just like number 2. On to line number 4. By now you're probably comfortable with reading it. This one might be a little more difficult to coordinate because you don't only have the snare on counts 2 and 4, you have it on count 2 and on count 4 and. I'll play one measure very slowly. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. I'm going to play line number 4 up to speed. 1, 2, ready, go. Line number 4 might have sounded familiar to you. It's a common drum beat used in the old surf music. Just play it a little bit faster, and usually they use the ride cymbal instead of the hi-hat. On to line number 5. Line number 5, the only difference here would be in the second measure. Instead of just a snare on 2 and 4, you have a snare on 2, 3, and 4. And the reason line number 5 is here is just to help you build coordination with the left hand while playing a basic rock beat. Line number 5. 1, 2, ready, go. On to number 6. Number 6 is probably the best beat on the page, in my opinion. It starts out with the basic rock beat from line number 2, and the second measure almost plays that same beat, except it takes the snare on 4 and moves it to the and. It displaces it a little, which provides a neat sounding rhythm. Line number 6, up to speed. 1, 2, ready, go. And that's it. That's the basics of reading drum set music. I hope you found this lesson useful to you. Keep drumming.